there'll be a lot of ministries out there. I think a lot of them are changing their stance on talking about pornography, but a lot of them that working in churches as long as I have experienced a lot of different philosophies. A lot of them will say, only find an accountability partner that's, not your spouse, and don't tell your spouse about it. And we disagree with that. The marriage ministry here at UpperRoom, their stance is as well, being vulnerable with your spouse, because you'll never have intimacy, and you'll feel that disconnect between the two of you. There's something being hidden, and get ahead of it. Whatever it is, if there's anything, get ahead of it. Don't give the enemy a legal right in your marriage, in your family, in your children's lives, in your grandchildren's lives. Get ahead of it, share, talk about it, contend together, because y'all are fighting for the same thing, right? So you're not fighting against this person. I'm not fighting against him. He wasn't fighting against me. We were fighting the powers, spirits, powers, and principalities of this world that were trying to take out our marriage, that were trying to take out their marriage. And we say no to hell, right? Hell no, you're not welcome here. So, but you're fighting for the same thing. So being honest, being transparent, and contending for each other, and contending for connection is so important.
Can I say one more thing? I want you to get this thought through your head right now. I know as you're looking forward to those of you who are engaged or thinking about becoming engaged in the near future, thinking about the wedding, how it's going to be this perfect day, okay? How many weddings you ever seen have ever gone off without a hitch, without any conflict, without anything going wrong? Probably none. Same thing is true for marriage. You think about marriage, it's like, I want our marriage to be perfect. Perfect does not mean conflict-free. It does not mean without its hard places, okay? I'm not saying it's always hard, but I'm saying that there will be some hard places. It's just life. You have permission to recognize and admit that your marriage is not going to be without problems. The question is, how are you going to resolve them?
I mean, the Bible's full of them, right? I mean, if you read the Bible, dang, Gina, there's a lot of conflict going on everywhere, all the time. And it's about Jesus being in the middle of it, the Holy Spirit from the beginning, from Genesis through Revelation. It's all about redemption, and it's a story of redemption, and we get to be a story of redemption. And so tonight we're going to talk a little bit about fighting and how to fight the good fight, fighting for connection. And I'm going to refer to the Gottman a lot. Gottman is a genius at marriages. He's done a lot of research, and from his research shows that the importance of marriage is not necessarily, survival is not necessarily how much you love each other, but it is how well couples handle disagreements. Knowing how to fight fair is critical to your survival as a happy couple. And there's big issue lists like finances. Next week, Christy and Wes are going to talk about finances, but we're talking about finances, and we're talking about fighting before finances, since finances is the number one reason that couples fight. So we're going to teach you how to fight well before you talk about finances next week.
Before you give something to fight about.
Yeah, right. So, using a lot of high-tech equipment, Dr. Gottman and his team of researchers have been studying marriages for more than 30 years, as long as we've been married, and identifying which ones will improve and which ones will deteriorate. And they are now able to predict the results with an astounding 95% accuracy rate, of which couples will succeed down the road. And he can spot and track a couple's marital breakdown by observing how they handle conflict.
The conflict that is inevitable.
Not how they do this, but how they disagree with each other. And disagreement does not mean disconnection. just like they talked about in their testimony. It's about you get to disagree because you are a different person than me. But we can still love each other and stay connected even though we don't agree on everything. I mean, I know I've got friends that, you know, he's a Republican and she's a Democrat and they're still married. Now we have some that are not that way anymore, but we do have some that are different. And you think, wow, how'd they do that? I don't know. But I don't know how they do that. But Dr. Gottman brought it down to 4 styles and of brokenness in their fighting. He calls them the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Because when all 4 horsemen show up in a marriage, all 4 of these styles reveal themselves in your marriage, it's time to get some real help and outside of you, and humble yourself and find help, because you're in for an apocalyptic ending, and that's not good. We want you guys to succeed, and so that means we want you to be aware of what these warning signs are. So
the 4 styles, again, one of them is not necessarily dangerous, and you'll see sometimes these things come up from time to time. But if all 4 of them are present, that's what's bad, and they're all 4 coming at the same time. Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And as she said, so criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And if you're trying to take notes, that's okay. We will also have a card to hand out later, or actually right now, that has these
little bookmarks I made.
Little bookmarks that Dawn made that are actually genius. So, these are the 4 styles of conflict that are unhealthy in marriage, okay? First of all, criticism. Complaining is a healthy marital activity. Airing a complaint, even though it's rarely pleasant, makes a marriage stronger in the long run than suppressing it. Complaining is okay, but it can slip into the deadly area of criticism very easily. And
So is complaining okay?
Yes.
Okay. Check you.
Okay. Yeah, they're listening. Right. The difference between criticism and complaint. Complaint is, I don't like it when this happens. I don't like it when you don't forget to put the seat back down. I don't like it when you leave your socks on the floor. When you said this, I felt this way. That's a complaint. That's fine. Criticism is, you always leave the seat up. You never pick up your socks. You're such a slob. You are this. Complaints are I statements. Criticisms are you statements. A complaint says, this is what's bothering me. A criticism is, you bother me. Okay? You don't bother me either, baby. All right. On your card, you'll see the criticism, this unhealthy style, and you'll see an antidote. Whenever you feel this coming up in your conflict style, you can short circuit it by talking about your feelings using I statements and expressing a positive need. Okay? And then you can invite presence in. An example of that is saying, Jesus, thank you for the image of you in my partner. That'll diffuse a session really quickly, helps bring your... If you think about how Jesus is represented in this person sitting next to you that you're really, really angry at the moment. All right, what prophetic word of encouragement can I share with them today? Boy, just going through that exercise right there, we'll kind of put a new perspective on things.
The next one is contempt, and contempt will poison your relationship whether a couple has been together for 4 months or for years, 40 years. And what separates contempt from criticism, according to Gottman, is the intention to insult and psychologically abuse your partner. The intent behind it. And that's when we start judging them as bad, that they're evil, they're doing this on purpose, they're trying to hurt you. And so you say things that blot out any positive feeling that you might have for them. And some of the common expressions of contempt are name calling. So you're attacking their identity. Hostile humor. That's really, oh, well, I was just joking. There's this burn when they joke and they cut you down, and they attack your identity. And then mocking. That's a big one as well. But there's not just verbal ones. There's also non-verbal. Thank you. Like eye rolling. I know none of y'all ever do that, right? Sighing. There they go again, complaining again. Or contempt with your gaze. Like you're just shutting them down, you're shutting them out, and you're saying, you have no value to me with your words, and you're devaluing them. That is contempt, and in your heart. So the antidote is remind yourself of your partner's positive qualities. Remind yourself, ask God about them. And then ask God, what's your truth about my partner? Who do you say they are? Where did you put your fingerprint, your image in this image bearer in front of me? How can I have contempt for an image bearer? Can't use my words sometimes. How can I have contempt for someone that carries the image of Jesus Christ? Right? But it's really easy to slip from criticism into contempt.
Criticism leads to contempt, and contempt often leads to defensiveness. And this is often kind of a ping pong match. It starts with criticism, it's responded with by contempt, or criticism leads into contempt, and contempt is countered by defensiveness. I'm a pro at defensiveness. I'm really good at defending myself. The problem with defensiveness is it's often reflexive. It's something that almost becomes a reflex that you don't really have control over, and this is something that I've had to work on myself a lot. It's when one person feels victimized, and if neither person is willing to take responsibility to restore the connection, then that's when we can become defensive. It's an instinctive reaction sometimes. I remember many times Dawn would be airing a complaint. Complaints are good. She's just telling me what's going on, and I received it as criticism. Or worse, I went immediately to contempt, that she's attacking me personally, and I would respond with defensiveness. Now, part of this was the problem that's what I was used to doing anyway, based on my previous porn habit. I was used to hiding myself off, and so defensiveness is a really easy thing to slip into when you're in that mindset anyway. By definition, it is the very opposite of vulnerability. Okay? The antidote: accept your partner's perspective and offer an apology for any wrongdoings. Own what you do. I don't like it when you leave your socks on the floor. I do leave my socks on the floor. I'm not sure why I do that. I'm sorry. I wish that's a bad habit. I don't like that about myself. Can you help? Please tell me when I do it again. I want to get better at this. Okay? That's a completely different animal than, those aren't my socks. Or, I don't leave my socks on the floor all the time. The other day, I came home and I put them in the basket. Okay?
And defensiveness a lot of times goes into, well, you do this. It goes into attack mode, right?
Yeah.
Well, I know, well, you do this and then you do that. Well, then you do this and you do that. And you're like, boom, boom, boom. And where's the connection?
It's called ping-ponging.
Yeah, where's the connection? It's been destroyed.
Right. The presence activation would be, Jesus is praying for a second. Jesus, what part of what they said is true? Okay? Because you kind of have to do that. And then how can I adjust? And the deeper thing from that is, what did their statement about, what part of that statement triggered something deeply inside of me that I need to get healing for, that you would like to heal? Boy, just going through those again. If you want to short circuit this, if you feel it coming up, feeling defensive, that's a great way to do it.
Yeah, we were working with a couple just recently that she made a comment about his faith and what was going on, just trying to find out where he was and what was going on. They're dating. And his father was very controlling and religious. And so without even realizing it, she triggered an emotion inside of him that he was actually reacting to being controlled by a religious figure in his life. And he just spun up real fast. And she's like, I don't know what just happened. And then later he was able to come back around and say, you know, that really wasn't about you. It was about my dad and how he used to control me and was always like, well, where's your faith? And why aren't you serving the Lord? And did you pray about that? You know, those kind of things. But a lot of times when you react really quickly and with a lot of passion and it's out of character, it's usually not about the other person in front of you. It's about a deeper wound. And so being able to stop and defuse, don't react in that moment if you're the other person, because they're not gonna be able to get there right then. It'll be well, they could, but that would be like a really big thing for God to, not too big for him, but it would be hard for you to step into that moment. But when it defuses and you get back down and you reconnect, then come back around and say, hey, so when I did that, does that remind you of something that happened when you were a kid? You know, asking those kind of questions and then listening and paying attention to those kind of things. So, but we've worked with a ton of different couples like that, and even in our own life, there's times that Tim's gotten upset and I'm like, okay, that really wasn't about me. I don't know what that was about, but being able to talk to the Holy Spirit in the midst of a conflict is something that you can grow in and get really good at, and then the Holy Spirit will guide you through those moments. So the next one is stonewalling, and that's when a person feels victimized and attacked. The next step is to stonewall, and they get overwhelmed with emotions and they just disconnect. They build a stone wall around them, and their faces become immobile. They don't have any reaction. My dad was the king of stonewalling. My mom would do something that would offend him. He would not speak to her for sometimes 2 weeks. Not speak to her at all. And they ran a ranch together. It wasn't like he went off to work and they came back. No, they were all there all the time. And that's what I grew up with. And then all of a sudden one day he would start talking again. And he would never ever tell you why he was mad. She never knew. She could guess sometimes, but sometimes she just didn't know why he would just stop talking and get angry. But he had just built this stone wall and it would go up. But the thing about that, if one of you is stonewalling and the other one has some insecurity, it's gonna trigger the insecurity, because anytime somebody starts pulling away from you, and you're gonna do whatever it takes to reconnect if you're battling insecurity. So you may start picking fights if you feel like I would pick fights with Tim when he was doing porn. And I didn't know that he was doing porn, but I could feel him disconnecting. And I'd be like, what's going on? What's going on? And so next thing I know, I'm picking a fight with him, because if he's not gonna connect with me this way, then I'm gonna connect with an unhealthy way.
Hailstorm, turtle.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, but exactly, hailstorm, turtle. But we learned how to do that, and I learned that I can't make him connect, but you can feel in your heart when somebody that you love is disconnecting for some reason. And so in being able to have the healthy language to talk about it is so important. But stonewalling, when it shows up, that means your emotions, your willingness to connect and contend for connection has come to an end. And if you see that in your relationship, please get help. Well, if you see one of the first three, get help. But when that one shows up and all of them are there, you can't do it on your own. That's why God put us in the body of Christ, is to be there for each other and help each other and contend for each other and believe for each other. Because I've seen people come back from the very worst places. And God is able and willing to restore anything if we give him our yes. So stonewalling need not mark the end of the marriage, But when the interactions become a routine, it's very fragile and will require a good deal of hard work.
Yeah, the real danger is letting these types of reactions become a habit and ingrained in your behavior. Okay, we've all done it. I've
We all
rolled
do
my eyes at
sometimes.
prayers. I've done the stonewalling thing where it's like, I'm not gonna move, I'm not gonna do anything, 'cause no matter what I do, it's wrong. That's just.
And I've done it too. I get in the car and leave.
Yeah, so it's.
That's not good either.
Right, but if that's how you deal with every conflict, if it ends up wind up with one or the other stonewalling, then you know, that's not good. So try to recognize them when they're occurring and recognize it's happening, and then try to take action. And one of the antidotes for stonewalling is what, honey?
Take a break, spend time doing something soothing or distracting, and then shift the atmosphere. They may put a wall around them, but who do we know that's great at tearing down walls?
The answer's always Jesus, by the way.
Jesus. Always Jesus.
Always. Yeah.
Except when you're talking about a bunny rabbit in children's church and you say, what's white and fluffy and got big floppy ears, and the kids go, Jesus! And I'm like, no, it's not Jesus. It's not Jesus. But shift the atmosphere, begin to pray, begin to intercede. Invite the Holy Spirit into that place, because he can give you revelation of how to reconnect and build those bridges and repair the breach, because he's for you. He's for marriage.
Fighting is good. I know it doesn't sound like what we just said, but it is. Fighting is good. Partners who refuse to accept conflict as part of the natural process of marriage miss opportunities to build connection and challenge each other and be challenged by each other. Those who avoid fighting at all costs risk disconnection and very negative consequences. We hear people say, well, we never fight. I worry about those types of situations. Now, it's one thing if you have conflict and you're able to healthily resolve them in short order, but if it's like, well, she never disagrees with me. Well, he never disagrees with me. That's not realistic. That means one of you has disappeared. Okay? Having a voice is critical in this whole thing. Okay? Unresolved anger, trust me, I know, can lead to some very negative hidden consequences. Those who sit on their anger, who avoid expressing emotions, those who avoid expressing their emotions, it ends up getting bottled up and finding an outlet somewhere, either through addictive behavior, or just explosive behavior. All sorts of negative consequences can occur. It can manifest as overeating, depression, gossip, physical illness. But it'll wind up being a devitalized marriage. And you don't want to wind up there.
So, we're going to give you a few rules in how to fight correctly. And we know not only what unhappy couples, we talked about what unhappy couples are doing. We're all happy, right? We're going to be happy couples, happy, healthy couples, right?
Happy all the time!
Woohoo! So we're going to talk about what happy, healthy couples do well, and successful couples resolve conflict without leaving scars. You don't want to leave scars. Yeah, physical ones or emotional ones, either ones. They've learned to fight a good fight by sticking closely to some of the following rules and protecting connection.
Right. Don't run from strife.
That's the first one.
Rule 1, don't run from strife. Don't allow yourself to bury something that irritates you. Okay? Anything you bury will resurrect eventually, typically in a manner that you're not really happy with. Sir?
How do you know what is something that you should voice yourself opinions over versus it is something that honestly should just be let go?
And that's a good question. You just need to say, how important is this to me? And it's not that big a deal, cause that's one of the rules is
Honestly, when in doubt, let it out.
talk it out,
Talk
yeah.
it out. Because honestly, I do this all the time. I'm king of this. Yeah, it's not that big a deal. Yeah, it's not that big a deal. And then all of a sudden, when all these little not big deal things wind up piling up, okay? And then one day something happens that is a big deal and it blows up and all this other crap comes out too, right? There's this exercise we're gonna introduce you to in a little while called sharing withholds, where you actually do 2 positive things, 1 negative. You share 2 positive things, 1 negative things. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Well, you
okay?
already talked about it, so.
Well, but we'll talk about it more in a second. But that's exactly what we're talking about. It doesn't matter how big the negative thing is or how small it is. Okay? Don't let any of it fester.
Right.
Okay?
And just be honoring when you say it. This is how I feel when this happens.
And it's totally different than saying you screwed up because you did this. Like when this happened.
Now,
it
just
made me
saying
mad.
that's wrong, you're doing it the wrong way, that's not a complaint, that's a criticism. You're wrong, like, that's the wrong way to load the dishwasher. Cause that doesn't really affect his feelings, except his feelings to maybe.
The better way to say it was, I prefer the dishwasher to be loaded this
Right,
way.
well, and he told me, he goes, this was like, this year he finally told me, well, when you put the butter knives down, then I won't scrape my hand on them. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is how it affects me.
Nothing is as
when I put
painful
the-
as a butter knife cut in the palm of your hand.
That was, you know, we didn't like it when I put the butter knives up, but I never had a really good reason, and so I just kind of throw things in there, I'm not.
And I just
organized.
redid it after without saying anything.
Yeah, he would just redo it. So, but when he told me why it affected him, how it affected him, then I was able, I willingly wanted to adjust. Does that make sense?
It's amazing how low stakes arguments, discussions become when you don't have a whole bunch of crap built up.
Okay.
Go ahead, sorry.
Choose your battles carefully. One of the major tasks of marriage is learning what you can and shouldn't be said. So not nagging, just state it. It's not your job, you're not the Holy Spirit, it's not your job to fix them, but you can share what's going on with you and how it affects you. And 90% of the things that people bicker about are really not that important and should just be overlooked. So you need to choose your battles. It's always helpful to consider whether the issue you're about to gripe about is related to a gender difference, or is it related to an unspoken rule or an unconscious role. Remember we talked about that the second week? Unspoken rules and unconscious roles. That's the way it's always been done in your life. And now you're putting your rules on them. Or this is what men are supposed to do. My dad always took out the trash. I don't know why you're not taking out the trash. It's an unconscious role. So is the thing that you're griping about an expectation that you never communicated or that was a part of your family's culture? And you get to decide in that moment, is this something I want to hand down to my kids and make a part of my culture right now? Do I want it to be a part of the culture that we're building in our house? And you can talk about it. Just say, hey, this really bothers me, but this is the way I've always done it. Let's talk about whether this is something we want to shift in our marriage, or is it just not that important? So where do you feel it? Where are you at on this? Does that make sense? Does that help a little bit?
There's a difference between choosing your battles and burying everything.
Right.
So
We don't want to bury, but we do want to.
No, just it's okay. Anything that's bothering you is okay to voice.
Right.
Okay? Just choose which hills you want to die on.
Yeah.
Define the issue clearly. When you feel the tension rising, ask the other to define clearly what the fight is about, until both of you can understand the issue. We have never fought about where I think she's thinking one thing and I'm thinking about something else. It can happen, and we're really, it's hard to do, but it's like, okay, exactly what are we talking about here? When did this occur? I want to know so that I can adjust. Okay, when you approach it from that angle, all of a sudden it becomes a lot less high stakes.
And on your card here, there's a thing called X, Y, and Z, a feelings formula on here. And in situation X, when you do Y, I feel Z. When we're riding in the car and you're looking at your phone, I feel unsafe. That's a good way to say that.
That never happens.
That's far more constructive than saying to your partner, "You're a crazy driver. Stop driving that way. Stop looking at your phone," right? When you look at the phone, when you're looking at your phone, when you're driving, I feel unsafe. And that's you being vulnerable and saying, I want you to feel safe. I want to feel safe. I believe you can make me feel safe. Right? That's what I'm communicating there.
That's good. All right. Also on this card has an intensity, feeling intensity thing. You have everything from one, like if there's a conflict going on, it's very helpful if both of you figure out the importance of what we're talking about. If she were to say to me, when you're looking at your phone when I'm driving, I feel unsafe. I can say, how important this is to you? Is this a 1 or a 10? Yeah, she's kind of implying it's very important, but I'll ask her. What would you say that would be? Would this be, I'm not enthusiastic, but it's no big deal, or over my dead body, will you keep doing this?
Probably like I strongly disapprove and cannot go along with it.
Right. Okay.
Sometimes.
And then I'd have to sit there and say, well, how important is it to me to look at my phone while I'm driving? It's not important at all, okay? That's a 1 to me, and this is a 7 to you, so I'll give on this. So it's actually, if you can get in the habit of doing this, it'll really help short circuit a lot of arguments and disagreements that don't even have to occur in the first place, okay? How important is it that we go to your mother's this weekend? To me, it's a 10. Oh, well, okay. I was wanting to play golf, but it's a 1 to me. So, or, you know, so that's a good way of kind of quantifying the emotional attachment you have to these positions that you're taking. Go ahead.
And sometimes if you're a high I, you know, like we both have some I in us, you have a tendency to get excited easily, and so it may not really be that important to you, but you're just excited about that. It seems that way. That's how you're portraying it. And you're like, oh, well, no, that's a 2 for me. I don't care. That's where I'm usually falls. I'm like, I don't care. There's very few things that I'm like a 10 on. So,
like, let's adopt a baby. What?
I did that one time. We were driving down the road. I said, I think we should take in foster kids. And he goes, is that your I speaking or your D speaking? I was like, that's my I. He goes, okay, that was just a passing thought. It came out of my mouth. You know, it wasn't something that I've already planned out.
My thought was, okay, we'll talk about it when we get home, which we'll never talk about it when we get home because we'll forget about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
except we talk about it all the time now. Give up put downs. Avoid put downs, jokes at the other person's expense, especially making jokes when you're disagreeing, because that just adds a sharp edge to them. And Achilles heels, avoid Achilles heels. You know what their tender places is. So if you're in a fight, don't talk about their mama.
You're just
You
like your
know,
mother.
you're just like your mother, you know, or, you know, bring up something you know that is like maybe a tender spot in their heart. Either way.
Yeah, this
This
is why
goes
your
both
dad-
ways.
yeah.
Goes both ways.
This is why your dad doesn't love you. It's probably not a wise thing to say.
Yeah.
Okay? Ever. I'm sorry you brought it up. Okay.
My dad loved me.
Yeah, that would never work on her. She knows her daddy loves her. All right. Don't dwell on downers. This is a very important one. Okay, don't dwell on downers is shorthand for saying stick to the issue. Okay? If you're voicing a complaint, stick to the complaint. It really bothers me when you leave the toilet seat up, and you leave your socks out, and you do this, and you do that. Oh, and by the way, you missed a house payment last month. You know, like, hailstorm. Okay, not you. I'm sorry, but that stick to the issue that you want to confront in that moment, and don't pile on all the other crap that they've ever done wrong in the history of knowing them. Okay, stick to the issue. that's how you protect connection and resolve the issue that you're really bringing up in this moment. If there's more to it, then say, you know what, can we talk about that in a separate conversation? Let's fix this thing first and then revisit that later. Okay.
It's kind of like when you keep throwing other things that they've done that have bothered you, it's like throwing gasoline on the fire. And this is your house. You're trying to burn down your own house. Don't do it. It's not a good idea. And
That's good.
And a lot of that happens because we gunny sack. We like, oh, little things that bother us, we put in this gunny sack and we're carrying that gunny sack around, and then we take the gunny sack and we boom! And then it explodes everywhere, and everything that we've been stuffing comes exploding out. And that's not healthy. I love the Passion version of Ephesians 4:26. It says, but don't let the passion of your emotions lead you to sin. Don't let anger control you or be fuel for revenge, not even for a day. Our emotions are good slaves, but horrible leaders. And we don't want to let them control our connection, the relationship that God's put us in. They don't get to decide. I'm powerful. Be powerful in those places. And don't gunny sack. But find a safe time when you're both connected and talk about those things.
Do the withholds.
Oh, we didn't do the withholds, did we?
No, we referred to it, but we'll talk about it now.
Okay, you did it?
Okay. A sharing withhold. Do you want to do the sharing withhold while I respond?
No, go ahead.
Okay. A sharing withhold is basically I don't know if you call it a compliment sandwich.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a compliment sandwich. You basically tell two things that you appreciate and one thing that you don't like. Okay? And you'll start with the thing you appreciate, follow it up by the thing you don't like, and the third one is followed by a thing you appreciate. And you're going to say these things. You'll each say them, and the response to each of them is going to be,
Thank you.
and then you're not going to
Thank
discuss the negative one for at least 30 minutes.
You don't get to discuss it. You don't get to come back
No
with
matter what it is.
You can't talk about it for 30 minutes.
Because that will, even if it is something that raises the emotional level, you'll get a chance to cool down and think about it and figure out what's going on, and we'll go from there, right? So, I did not get a chance to prepare this, so I'm trying to think of something I appreciate. I appreciate how well prepared you are all the time whenever you take under something that's important to you.
Thank you.
I don't like it when you show me the clock.
Thank you.
I appreciate how much you love me.
Thank you. So, it was something negative, and I did. I moved the clock over a little closer to remind him of what time we had.
Which you're doing great on.
And I shouldn't have brought that up.
No,
But it's
okay.
just saying thank you. Okay? We don't get to fight it out. We don't get to talk about it for 30 minutes. So, we have given you a sheet of feelings. So if you do not know your feelings, this will help you. If you can't, you're asking your partner, what are you feeling right now? And all they're feeling is like, I'm just angry. Here are some other words. Look and find some other words. Levi sent me one, but I couldn't print it out. It was all fuzzy. So I found this. But there's strong and medium and light words. Find some other words to bring into your relationship so that'll deepen your intimacy. And then you get this beautiful thing here. This is hopefully you've already done your individual mission statement. This is your marriage mission statement. It's self-explanatory. Everything's in here. If you're to the place where you're moving on and you want to start moving closer to marriage, if you're just still staying in the dating place, you can take it and put it in a file and say it'll be there later. That's okay. But if you are moving towards marriage, I encourage you to fill this out. We would love on the last night, if you've done a marriage statement, to share your marriage statement with the group. The last night's our celebration night. If you're not doing a marriage statement, maybe just share your individual mission statements. So this is a marriage mission statement, and we should all have individual mission statements. Because if my mission statement is, to build orphanages in Africa, and his mission statement is to end up in Oklahoma taking care of, living with his family on a farm. Those two are not really compatible, right?
Or at least they need to be reconciled.
Yeah, it's
In some
something that
form.
we need to, because if we're both moving towards our dreams need to be able to move alongside each other. But in ours, he's a pilot, and I love to train and equip, and it works out for us. So we've learned to use what we're really called to do to equip. He trains and equips in airplanes, and then we both do it in church settings together. So building this out will not only help you move towards where you wanna go as a couple, but when we talk about finances next week, it's very important to have a mission statement. And in your workbook, there's a page about building out your budget. And so that's one of the things that you're gonna work on this week, is work on this and work on your budget for next week. Okay, and we are done. You may go to your groups now.